Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike, and it's a very special edition, Mike. You know why?
Because we got a week off next week.
2 weeks off. We won't.
Really?
This is our,
That's right. Next week and then the 8th.
Exactly. So this is our last Ask Mike of 2023. I will see you in 2024 after this one.
Okay.
So again, letting you guys know, we will not have Ask Mike for the next 2 weeks. So enjoy this one because this is going to be your last one until the new year. So let's get right into it, shall we? Lots of basketball questions this week, and that makes sense. So Hot Atlanta Hog asks, could you assess how the Hogs basketball team is doing so far this year? Pros, cons, outlook?
Yeah, that's a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
Let me just say that, talk about all the stuff I've read about since the Lipscomb game, the close call, couple that with the loss to OU and what was said last week by, I think it was Jalen Graham that was on Wednesday, yeah, and with Muss, and they talked a lot about the things they were going to work on and what they were going to try to do. And a lot of people are saying, look, this team is not the typical Muss team. We're really worried. You can't just say, oh, these guys will be all right in January or all right in February or all right by March. They don't look like they've got the same level of talent, blah, blah, blah. They're saying a lot of this stuff. I don't agree with any of that. I don't think you beat Purdue, and I don't think you beat Duke without talent. There's plenty of talent on this team. What they've got is an inconsistency issue. And inconsistency is the enemy of all sports. I don't care who it is. Your dad's a coach.
Yeah.
If you've got players that don't compete the entire time they're out on the basketball floor, that's a problem. Now when you've got a bunch of guys that do that, play for a few minutes, then don't, take time off, then you've got issues. And to me, the best example of what I'm talking about, because I've gone back and looked at this, Arkansas had a 10-point lead over Lipscomb at the half. So for the first 9 minutes of the second half, they jumped that lead from 10 to 20 points. So I went back and looked to see what were they doing to do that. Well, first of all, you can't just do what a lot of fans do and just blow Lipscomb off because you never heard of them. You think they're a stupid school, and Arkansas beat them 2 years ago and they stink. You got to look at what they're doing. And when I watched them, they were really well coached. They were running their half-court offense like a textbook. It wasn't always working, but they had ball movement. They were doing ball screens. Guys were getting open, and they just would work it around. And when Arkansas was playing good defense like they were in that segment, they were just making these guys work, and then they'd get down to about 6-7 seconds of the shot, and they'd have to take a shot and would miss it. It was an off-balance shot. And so then they get the ball back, and now they're going down and doing the same thing. They've got good ball movement. And for instance, one of the things they do a lot of times is they somebody will either penetrate into the middle of the lane or they'll throw the ball in. If that person gets collapsed upon and is double teamed or sometimes triple teamed, it's harder to make the shot. I'm not saying you can't. But when that happens, somebody's open. And if that somebody attacks the baseline, it's a simple flip, backdoor layup. And they were doing stuff like that. And they got the 20-point lead. And then right after they got it, the first guy comes down 5 seconds into the shot clock and jacks up a three and misses it. They go back, and then the ball comes off to a point where it's one of those long rebounds, and somebody grabs it and goes right down the floor and beats everybody down the floor and makes a layup. So now it's 18 points. So they go back down, take a little more time this time, but jack up another three, miss it, go back down. They got to work a little bit more on offense, but they hit another. This time I think they hit a three. Yeah. So now the 18 is down to 15. So then the next time they come down the floor, the ball goes inside, but the guys, so in other words, you didn't just take a three, come down the floor, oh, let's jack up a three, goes inside. I'm thinking, okay, where's the cutter? There's nobody cutting. I go back and stop the video and look again, and you got 4 guys standing around like they're watching the game. They're stationary. The guy's in the middle of the lane with the ball. He can only stand there 3 seconds or it's a shot, or it's a violation, lane violation. So you got to do something, and he's looking around. Nobody's doing anything. They're just standing there. So he kicks it back outside, and a guy jacks up another three and misses that, and they go back down, and it just went like that on and on and on and on. So how did they win the game? They finally got a layup, got ahead, And those guys still got 2 more cracks at wide open 3-pointers, one of them with about 12 seconds left and another one with 3 or 4, and they just missed them. The last one almost went in. So what you got is a focus issue. You were doing something and then you just stopped doing it. And it reminded me of the women's loss against UAPB, except the women only had about a 10 or 12 point lead. And when they blew that lead, all of a sudden it's a game and they lost it. And Arkansas would have lost that game if they didn't have the 20-point lead. If it had been a 10, 12-point lead, they'd have gotten beat.
Yeah.
So what do you do there? Well, I've had people say to me, Musselman never calls timeout. He should call timeout and talk to these guys. And everybody got their own theory. I'm talking to a guy that covers the team last night over the phone, and we both agreed. We said, he doesn't do things for the reasons that we sometimes think he does. And his theory was that he wants them to be in those situations. He wants to see how they react because he's such a teacher that even if it comes out negative, like the OU game where they got beat, you can take that video and go back and show them what they're doing wrong with the idea that you're eventually going to correct this when it really matters. And I think there was some of that going on. I'm not saying he intentionally wants to lose the game to Lipscomb, but I think he's looking and saying, okay, we're in this situation. How are we going to handle it? And he's observing and knowing he can come back after the game, show them this video, and talk about what I just talked about. Now, I don't know if he does it that way.
Or you can call a timeout, teach within the game, let them know what they're doing wrong, and then maybe possibly win by more.
He typically doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And that's my theory on why he doesn't do it. Now, there was a lot of talk about with Jalen Graham. He gave some reasons why he took him out. But the point is, I'm not as concerned as a lot of these fans because I don't think there's a lack of talent. I don't see anybody on that team that can't play. There's not a guy, maybe Bay Fall, just because they don't play him and we hear he's real raw and their work. To me, I think by the end of the year, he ought to, maybe mid-conference play, you ought to be playing him. He's a big guy, 6'11", tallest guy you got.
Well, they played pretty much everybody in that Lipscomb game besides him, right?
He didn't. But the point is, those guys can all play. I don't even think it's a chemistry issue. I think it's a focus issue. 2 or 3 times they got a rebound, started down the floor, and somebody would just kick the ball to another guy he's here, you're there, kicks the ball to you, and you take your eye off of it. You're already ahead of yourself. The ball's coming here, boop, I'm already downfield, and it just goes off your hands. It's a lack of focus. You got to look that ball into your hands before you take off. And so it's just a consistency thing. And I think and there's some other issues here. I still think that Tremont Mark and Tevin Brazil, I don't think they're fully over those injuries. An ankle injury and the other one's a back problem. I think they're playing, but you don't know what that feels like out there. You don't know that Brazil might not be sitting there thinking, man, I don't want to turn that ankle again. If I do that, I'll be out another 2 or 3 games. So maybe he's a little more careful than he normally would, not free to move the way he normally does. Mark may be saying, I don't want to fall on my back like I did that last time.
Wasn't it like also a groin injury? It was less of a back and more
well, whatever it ended up being.
Because those can take a while to heal up.
I just don't think they haven't played the way they did before. And I think by SEC play, they'll probably be okay. So I'm not worried. Other people are. I'm not telling you to listen to me. All I do on this show is tell you what I think. But I think those are what the issues are. And I think, yes, the SEC's tough, but I also think this is the toughest schedule in November and December Arkansas's played since Musselman got here. And you may say, well, not Lipscomb. Yeah, looking at the way they played. Does anybody not notice how much there's parity now in Division I basketball?
There is.
A team can be no name, but that doesn't mean they don't play hard. It doesn't mean they're coached poorly. Those guys were technically better than Arkansas.
Yeah.
They ran their offense better. They played better defense. The only reason they lost is because Arkansas had more talent. Yeah. You get Arkansas playing the way those guys did, and they're going to be pretty good.
There's parity. I mean, we've talked about it on this show before, Mike, but there's a lot of people that don't realize the effects of COVID and what they did. And I brought it up on the show where My dad's gotten D1 players on his D2 team. Why? Because rosters were overflowing on D1 due to people taking their COVID year, and they just don't have enough spaces.
Right.
So these players are trickling down to these lower tier D1 teams and these D2 teams, and that's how you're seeing the talent kind of go, wait, these guys are really good. Yeah, it's because they can play in D1. That's because they can play at a higher D1 team, but they decided to go to a lower tier D1 or even a D2. That's why you're seeing D2 teams play D1 teams competitively. There is a parity there, but what concerns me and what I've seen with this team, and I kind of agree with Musselman, is that this team feels like there's a lack of identity, where it's like, what team? There's the inconsistency thing, but what is the identity of this team? And Musselman's talked about that before in post-game press conferences, where he's still trying to figure that out. We're playing all these different guys. We're seeing what works each night. And there isn't really a lineup that you can go, that works, that really is good. And so he's playing more guys when he usually plays less. And we kind of just don't know what they're going to look like in SEC play. And I think that is where you see the fan concern is, what is this team going to look like in SEC play?
Yeah.
And I think that's a question the coaching staff is even asking right now.
I'm still not worried. I would be.
I like that.
I still would be worried if I thought there was a definite talent drop off, and I don't.
I agree with you that there's no talent drop off. I agree with you on that. I just think it's more than that with this team, where it's like, I just don't know what kind of team you're going to get show up, and that goes into the consistency thing, right? That goes into what you're talking about.
I don't know what the psychology is if you're out there and you go, oh, my identity, I don't know my identity. I just see it as you thought you had the game won because you were up by 20 and you started playing like an idiot.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it turned into a game and you're like, uh-oh. You know, that's the way I look at it.
I like your take on it, Mike. Well, I need your positivity going into SEC play because it's looming around the corner. More basketball questions, though. Marty Bird's proxy. Jalen Graham. Have the Hogs ever had a player that had a shorter leash? It seems like he'll be rolling pretty good and boom, vanish. I get that there's holes in his game, but dang it, so do others.
Well, that's a Mustang.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I thought he was gone when the season was over last year. I was surprised that he wasn't one of the ones told to exit because Muss was really mad at him because of his defense. But we found out later on that Musselman felt like he had a lot of potential. He just had to work with him on some things.
Yeah.
He's always been a good scorer inside. He's a guy that can make good little turnaround, looping layups. He can hit short jumpers, spin and go to the basket. He's good around the basket. So he had to get his defense better. His defense has improved.
Yeah, the 2 blocks, they were pretty impressive.
What's he not doing? Muss said he's not rebounding. That was one of the reasons he took him out, because he's told him you got to rebound better, and he wasn't. The other thing was he had a careless turnover. I think he kind of looked away when the ball came his way, and so it got away, and so he takes him out.
Yeah.
Now, I think the reason he leaves him out is obvious. Okay, you don't want to do the things I tell you to do? How do you like it over here? And then when they go out the next time to play, it's like, I'm a little more motivated.
Yeah, it's a coaching technique.
I think he's real key because I think he's not only good himself. I think Brazil, I think Mekhi Mitchell, I think they all play better when he's playing. Now, they don't all have to be out there at the same time, but the team works better when Jalen Graham is playing and he's out there on the floor. So I think he'll be there. I just think he's still in the learning lessons mode.
Yeah, where Musselman's trying to teach something, where he's using it as a teaching moment of, exactly, like, if you're not going to do the things I asked, you're not going to play. You're just not going to play.
He's breaking him like you would break a horse.
I'm
not saying he's a horse.
I know, right, but I kind of like that, where that's a really good, my dad does the same thing. He'll pull players out just like Musselman does. When you do something careless in a game, a stupid turnover, he'll take him out. He'll say, sorry, you made a stupid mistake. I can't leave you in right now. So Musselman does the same exact thing. And so I saw exactly why Jalen Graham was taken out of that game. And I think he does need to rebound better. But I think his defense is getting better.
He's improved there. So now all you do is rebound better and be more focused. Don't run off down the floor and not look that the ball's coming at you.
Not look that the ball's coming at you. Exactly, Mike. Call Me Surprised says, I tuned into the game Saturday and saw Manyfield playing. How did that happen? How do you think it will impact the team?
Well, the first thing that surprised me was the fact that this is his first game and everybody else playing, their 7th or 8th game?
Yeah,
they're a month and a half into the season, and he didn't look that bad. I saw potential there. He didn't go out and look stupid and get taken out and didn't play again. He played throughout the game, different times. He didn't tear it up. but I think he's adjusting. He's a possible point guard guy. I was on the radio this morning and I said, I don't think there is a one point guard on this team or two. Devo can even be a point guard
He
at
can,
times.
yeah.
So, but I think this is one more piece of the puzzle, one more thing you can do. The only thing, we talked about this last week. Muss has talked about having the shorter guards that don't match up against the other team's longer guards. So I worry about him as a defensive issue when he's on somebody that's 6'4".
Yeah, he's little.
and they take him to the basket, and then all they got to do is go up and lay it up. But I think he adds. I think he adds some offense for sure. And he's a good defensive player. He's just, in certain situations, I don't think you want him on a 6'4" guy, 6'5" guy.
I don't think that matchup is going to work out. But I like, again, you talked about, we didn't tear things up. That was his first game.
Right, exactly.
That was his first game. And I like what you saw on the stat sheet because, like you said, you saw a lot of potential, right? You didn't see a lot of scoring, but, hey, he had 2 real nice assists, and I like that. He sees the floor well, which – for a point guard, you need, right? So I think he can play the point. I think that's where you see where Devo, I'm like, yes, he can play the point, but do you want him playing the point or do you want him doing something else?
Right.
I like Keon kind of being that point, playing the point, seeing the floor really well. That way you don't need him inside trying to get a rebound on a 6'6" guy. Yeah. So I like him. I think you see a lot of potential in him. Kevin McPherson talked about that in our Hoop Hogs report that we do every Sunday. He talked about, hey, he didn't pad the stat sheet, but in his very first game of the season, he saw a lot of potential. And you know what I like about him, Mike, as a player? After every game this year, home game, who was working? Who's putting up shots?
Oh, he's great on the bench too.
Oh my gosh, he's firing up the team.
We
has a good attitude.
Found a piece of video, and it was before one of the games, but he was dancing around, going crazy, and then he turned around and saw Musselman look at him. He thought, "Oh, what should I?" Then he started doing it again. Muss is laughing.
Yeah,
he's got some energy.
He's got a good attitude, and I like that. He's a hard worker, good attitude. So I'm excited to see him play for the rest of the season. S. Giles says, I've been disappointed with Devo's play so far, but he won the Lipscomb game with a huge layup when the Hogs offense had left the building. It just seems like he sits there and waits for a moment to save the day.
Well, we forget about it because we keep being told over and over again. We put him on the other team's best defensive player, and fans are conditioned not to look for that. They're looking for scoring. They're looking at whoever has the ball, so they're not sitting there watching and focusing on Devo. So they may not notice him. But then what happens is he just has this ability, and this is what I thought happened in that game. They had just, nobody was scoring inside. It was like, I got to shoot from the middle of the lane and I'm triple teamed.
Or a three.
I got to shoot jack up a 3. And he just went, okay, nobody else will go for a layup, I will. And he just went in there and made the layup. And it turned out to be the difference in the game. It got them from 1 point to 3 points, and then they tried 2 3-pointers and missed. And you just sit here and you know that that's not the last time he's going to do that. I don't know when it's going to happen. But there will be other games this year when nobody else is scoring, and he's going to take over.
Yeah, Turney Devo, right? Why did he get that nickname, Turney Devo? He turns it on when he needs to take over, and it's kind of like, it's very heroic,
did you see
honestly.
the video of after the game where all those kids were leaning over? They love him.
They love him. And I honestly just love Devo's attitude about everything because he knows he's there to do whatever the team needs, which is great. If it's great defense, he's there to be that defensive guy. It's just he does whatever he needs. He doesn't need to be the leading scorer every night to know that he is valued on that team. And I like that attitude too. It's
Absolutely.
a great attitude. MDW says, tonight I watched the basketball Hogs play in North Little Rock. Simmons Bank Arena is like the Bermuda Triangle. I love it for Hogs basketball. Creepy stuff happens and nobody knows why. Do you have any idea what's going on?
Yeah.
I mean, the lights didn't come on, right?
I know that, but I know what was going on. I just described it in the opening question. It didn't have anything to do with creepy or the lights going out or any of that stuff because they played okay in the first half when the lights were creepy.
The lights are creepy.
Well, whatever it was. The whole thing is, again, this team has some problems, and North Little Rock didn't have anything to do with it. That could have just as easily happened in Bud Walton. So I don't think that the arena had anything to do with the way they played.
Well, people like to blame it on something, and so I think playing in a different environment is sometimes
there was
what they like
always
to
a
say.
theory that because it was originally a hockey rink, and so when you configure it for basketball, you got one end, and I think it's the east end, that's really far back to the stands. And players have said to me that it kind of, you don't get a background the same because you just got all this empty space, and it kind of gives you a weird look at the. And I mean,
I can see that. I can see where they're saying that.
I still don't think it bothers most players, but some people said that they didn't play better if they were shooting there in the second half. On that goal in the second half, it might affect them, or if it was first half or whenever, and then they were better on the other end.
Exactly. I mean, again, I think people just like to. They see their team play bad, and they like to say, "Oh, it's the arena, oh, it's the atmosphere."
What you cannot deny is the atmosphere is great. It was full. Look, it was on TV. I was wondering, okay, if you put this on TV, does that affect the crowd? No, it didn't. It was still full. And here's the other thing about Little Rock that I've noticed for crowds. They're not like Fayetteville. You know what happens at Bud Walton? 5 minutes before the game starts, you're going,
where is everybody?
Where is everybody? And then 4 minutes of the game, you look around, it's sort of full. Everybody shows up after the game starts because they're in there getting candy or whatever, you know.
Popcorn.
But they, in North Little Rock, they're there like 15, 20 minutes before the game, like, okay, let's play. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
So I like it.
And also, it's really good, and Kevin brought this up on our Hog Hoops report this week, and I like that he brought this up. It really helps for recruiting to have a game there, to go to that area of the state and play a game there. The recruits that were there like to see it, like to see the Hogs play in their neck of the woods. So,
and this is why they're not only, because people ask about this from time to time. I don't think they are not only going to continue to play basketball there. They will play a baseball game there every year, and I think War Memorial is going to continue as a football venue. I think what Yurachek is eventually going to do once the contract is up in 2025 is I think he's going to stage a series of games against in-state competition. So that's always going to be an Arkansas State, a UCA, Arkansas Pine Bluff. That's what you're going to see them play. It's going to be about them allowing in-state teams to play in-state in front of a crowd and make some money, and Arkansas helps out.
Absolutely. I think you're exactly right about that. Dag Namit, sorry, that's such a hard name, but I love it. I have read that U of A players have been getting cars in cash for a very long time. Is that true, Mike? If true, it seems like we as fans of clean programs have been duped.
It's a good question. The answer is very complicated, so you got to pay really close attention to what I'm saying, because I've been aware of certain rumors since I got here in '75. Sometimes you talk to former players. Sometimes a guy knows a player. I heard of this happening. So first of all, as a media person, there's no way you would ever prove anything if it happened, because whoever told somebody that happened, they're not going to tell you so they can go on TV and say it and expose everything. That would never happen. So what is my opinion? He asked me, do I think they are giving players cash and cars? Not in the recruiting process. And I personally think that makes a world of difference. In the old Southwest Conference days, and I still think it up until NIL, and now this has all gone away because a lot of this stuff is legal, what used to be done.
Right.
But in the old Southwest Conference days, everybody knew SMU cheated, everybody knew Texas cheated, everybody knew A&M cheated, and sometimes Baylor did, and sometimes there were all these rumors that you could never prove. But what I was hearing was the outright buying of a player to get them to come to and Arkansas did not do that. So what did they do? How could somebody get cash or a car or something after they got here? Yeah. I want to give you an example of something I heard about and never was able to prove it.
Okay.
Good player comes in, doesn't have a car, has to walk everywhere he goes, plays for 2 or 3 years, is a good player, helps them win, and a certain booster gets to know him, likes him. They had a thing in those days, if you weren't married, you had to stay in the athletic dorm. On Sundays, the cafeteria staff was given Sunday night off. Those players were on their own on Sunday night. You just got to figure out a way to get your own food. And the story was that a lot of those guys in the athletic dorm would go down at lunch on Sunday and get food and take it up to their room just so they'd have something to eat at night. And others had money, because not all kids are broke. Some of them would just go out and eat, but the ones that couldn't. And he said this particular guy was friends with this booster, and the booster was aware of this was going on. He said, "Hey man, you can come over to the house. My kids like you, my wife likes you. You're just like an older son to us, and we'll just come by and we'll feed you, and we can just all visit." And he became almost like a member of their family. And this went on for a while, not just a little bit, but for a while. And he gets to his senior year, and the guy just goes, "You know what? I'm having to drive you around. You have to walk everywhere. You're a great guy. Your family can't afford it." He bought him a car. That's what I was told. Now, I couldn't prove it.
Wow.
But he supposedly bought this guy a car, and he said, and if this really happened, and I don't know that it happened because I was told this by a second party, but if it really happened, what are we talking about here? The guy didn't buy him a car to get him here. The guy didn't buy him a car to keep him here. He wasn't going anywhere. He came here without a car. He wasn't given any incentives other than you want to come to Arkansas, and he wanted to. So there wasn't any of that involved. This was somebody that had come to accept this kid as almost a member of his family, and I'm going to do this for you because we all like you. Now, even if I could prove that, you think I would rat that out and take that kid and get Arkansas in trouble and I don't think I would do it, because I had an attitude after covering college football for about 5 or 6 years. I began to develop an attitude of what the NCAA was doing. Do you know that we're in this NIL mess now because of the NCAA? We've talked about it.
Yes.
They had these ridiculous policies about scholarships where you couldn't do this and you couldn't do that and that couldn't happen. And what they were doing was they were taking these kids in and giving them room and board in an athletic dorm, and that was it. And there was a big disparity between kids that came from parents that had money and kids that didn't. I'll give you an example of somebody I know that went to another school, not Arkansas, because I know his mother. And she said where he was playing was in a ghetto. The school, the campus was outside of a ghetto area in a large city. And the coaches told all their players when he got there, do not walk off campus by yourself. You might not come back. If you're going to walk out of here, go with 10 or 12 of your buddies, you know. But better still, find somebody with a car and go with them. And he just let his mom know after a certain period of time, I got to have my car. They left it back here in Arkansas. And so she drove his car out there and flew back on a plane. So he had a vehicle. And so then he could drive and take other buddies, and they could go 20 blocks away or get out of the bad part of town to do whatever they want to do. Go to the movies, go to a convenience store, whatever. But the NCAA put people in that position where there was this big disparity. I've got money. A month or so ago, I told the story of a quarterback here, that where people said to me, "Oh, he's not friendly. He doesn't run around with his teammates." I didn't ask him. I went to one of his buddies and said, "What's going on with the guy?" They say he doesn't like him. He said, "He doesn't have any money and he's too embarrassed to go, get money from them. Oh, let's go to the movies." "Well, I don't have any." "Okay, here's some money." He didn't want to do that. Didn't want to go on Dixon Street and have people buying him dinner. So he just stayed in his dorm room. There was an imbalance between what some kids had and what other kids have. And think of yourself, if you've had kids, think about the peer pressure thing where you're around other people and you want to be like them, but you're not like them. Yeah, you got a scholarship like they do, but they can live a normal life. You're living this Spartan life. So I was aware of all that stuff, and I didn't like it. Now, here's what I was also aware of, because somebody told me this, and I never saw it happen, but this is what I was told. Let's say you have a mother, a father, 2 brothers, and a sister. So there's 5 of you. Besides you would make 6. And you go in on Monday to whoever handles this, and you say, "I need 5 tickets because my family's coming in."
Oh, yeah.
And they go, "Okay, yeah, you got 5. Okay, it's 5, and they give you 5 tickets. You go out and sell those tickets for $150, and now you got some spending money. And I know that went on. Am I going to rat those guys out for that? Technically, it's a violation. But I'm not going to track that down and try to figure that out, because I don't think, again, they didn't come here with that incentive. It didn't keep them from leaving. It was just something that was allowed to happen in order for them not to live a ridiculous life where they had no money. And just last night, I had a conversation with somebody who goes way back further than me. And he told me about a story he heard in the early 50s when George Cole was the athletic director. And he said he never saw this, but this was the rumor, that there was a guy in the athletic department that had a desk, and in that desk was money. Not $20,000, tens, 20s, fives, ones. He just kept cash in there. And he said the reason for that was that there were athletes in the program who came from families and they were dead broke. And sometimes things would come up. An example, you take your laundry down to a laundry and you're washing it and somehow you ruin a shirt or some pants or something.
That happens.
And you don't have, what do I do about this? My clothes are messed up. So they said, you could go to this guy. He was almost like the judge. You'd sit back and listen to your story and you could say, oh, I have this emergency. I ruined my clothes. I don't have any pants to wear to class. I got to go buy some pants and I don't have any money. It was like, okay, here's $10. Go buy some pants, or here's 15 or whatever. And he would dole that out. Again, if I knew about it, would I rat them out and say to somebody, no, you don't have a right to have any pants because the NCAA says it's a violation? There were all kinds of stories. I mean, one of the things that happened when they created this new scholarship thing about 10 or 15 years, it was called a cost of attendance scholarship. It was a new thing, and they revised their policies. And one of the things that they allowed was around $700 or $800 a month spending money to eliminate this kind of stuff. See, so they finally figured it out. But what happened to all those guys before that? They were just doing what they had to do to not live like morons, you know, just, oh, yeah, we're playing football. Think about it. All these other people are doing well, but there are certain players that are just sitting there living the life of almost, I'm stuck going to class and sitting in my dorm room and nothing else because I got no money. So this was stuff that went on. Now, I'm saying yes, probably somebody got a car at some point, or maybe there was 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But what were the circumstances? They didn't buy them to get them here. They didn't give them the car to get them here. They didn't give money to get somebody here. It just happened once they were here and established, and somebody looked at them and said, you know what, he really needs this money. For instance, and those days, your grandmother dies, you got no way to, you miss the funeral. Because it's an NCAA violation if they help you go back, if your parents can't send you the money for a plane ticket. Now the school can do that, okay? So a lot of what he's talking about in this question about these rumors, it was before the cost of attendance scholarship and obviously before now, because now you can do it with NIL money. It's a totally different situation. But I think what they're talking about here is the rumors of, oh, they bought cars and they'd give money.
And they'd say, come play for us, right? Yeah, here's
it wasn't
a car.
that. It wasn't large sums of money. It was something to help a guy that was in a really bad situation. You just can't, you know him. He's a part of your team.
Yeah.
And you're not just going to go, oh, I'm sorry, bub. Good luck, but come to practice and work harder next week. I don't know what to tell you. You're not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of feel bad for it. I mean, my dad would always invite his players over that didn't have money to go home for the holidays, like for Thanksgiving and Christmas and things. We'd always invite the players over, oh, come to our house. It's open, open doors, everything. And I know of other coaches that did that. And so you feel for these guys that don't have the money to do those things. And at what point is the line a little bit gray, right? Where it's like, you're not doing something so bad.
I'll tell you one more quick story. And this guy told me this directly, but I'm not going to say who he was. He was a football player here a long time ago. And he said, Texas was recruiting him, SMU was recruiting him, Baylor was recruiting him, and Arkansas was recruiting him. He said some SMU and Texas boosters, different guys, came around and kind of implied, hey, if you go to our school, you'll get this or you'll get that. And he said one day, a Texas booster said, hey, once you come to whatever school you're going to, you're not being recruited by anybody in your hometown. You have to drive there, and you got a pretty crummy car. Wouldn't it be nice to have a new car to drive to school so you wouldn't have to worry about it breaking down? And he said, I told the guy, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a new car. But he said, I never told him I would go to his school, the school he was a booster for. I just said, yeah, I'd like a new car. That's all I said. He said a few days later, he came home. There was a car in his driveway. There was a title to it in the front seat and a key. And he said, I got that car, I drove it to Arkansas. And he said there wasn't anything they could do about it.
Great.
And he said, Arkansas didn't offer me anything. I just took it from some other school, and I didn't ask for it. He just put it in my driveway, and I'm going, okay, thank you.
That guy swindled the system, and I like it. I like it.
So that's another reason why I don't think Arkansas bought people to get them here. I just think once they got here, if there was a needs situation, or you had a special relationship with a booster that's beyond a regular relationship. This isn't, oh yeah, we like you, here's a bunch of money. You play for Arkansas. It's like, I know you really well. You've come over to my house. My kids think of you as their older brother.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
I mean, it's just different, right? It's the little, at what point, we're talking about not black and white here, we're talking about the gray, right? It's the gray area that you're like, okay, the NCAA would say this is a violation, but if you have a heart.
To me, the dividing line is, did you pay them money to get them here? Did you pay them money to keep them from leaving here?
Yeah.
If you didn't do that, some of this other stuff to me is it's borderline. I think the rules should have been modified a long time ago.
Absolutely, and well, they are now. You know, it's a free for all. So
that's part of why we are where we are now.
Exactly. The next question relates into this last question from Dag Nabbit. It's de prospecta. I don't even know how to say it. How would you say it?
Yeah.
Da prospecta. I like it. He can't answer that because that is incriminating our own program. All I can say is what you've read here has a high probability of being true.
Well, I did answer it. I don't think I incriminated anybody because
you didn't use names or anything.
First of all, it's all that's in the past and it doesn't even matter anymore. But he's implying that I wouldn't do, if I had real evidence of, like now, Arkansas somehow cheating on something, that I wouldn't cover it because it wouldn't.
No, you definitely cover it.
But what I would have to have proof, and it would have to be somebody on the record. It's not going to be some guy told me and then he's going, yeah, but I can't say anything about it. I mean, I just don't work that way.
No. Well, none of us in journalism do. You can't just go off of something that a random person says. It has to be a real good source. Normally double check through a few sources.
If it was something like paying off a player, I'd have to have somebody directly witnessed it going on the record and have some sort of proof.
Absolutely. Whippersnapper asked, and I'm so glad they asked this question, how about Harding University rushing for over 6,000 yards? First team to ever achieve it at any level of college football. And while we're at it, congratulations to Harding, right? First Division II national championship.
Yeah, it was a nice story because in a year in which Arkansas stinks, you had somebody.
Harding did really well.
You see, have an in-state school win a national championship. But here's what strikes me: they won a Division II national championship. In 1970, Arkansas State won a Division II national championship, and UCA won 3 NAIA titles: one in '84, one in '85, and one in '91. And we know Arkansas won one in '94 in Division I. That's 4 different Arkansas schools have won national championships. 4 different Arkansas schools or universities, colleges, whatever. And when people tell me, look, Arkansas is just not a football state, you can't win that big like that in this state. That's what the excuse they give. It's stupid. If that were true, you wouldn't see this. You can say, well, that was Division II. Harding's competing against Division II schools all over the country.
Yeah.
How did they get that good being here in little old Arkansas? How did that happen if there was an issue where you just can't do it here? Well, they did. Arkansas State did it in 1970. I mean, what was UCA doing with all those NAI titles? I mean, where they just did something, I mean, come on. They won them. Yeah. NAI is not just located here. It's not 4 or 5 schools here doing NAI. It's everywhere.
Yeah. You're right.
Texas, all these big states, they beat all those teams. So it's idiotic to sit here and say Arkansas has no chance of ever winning big like that, University of Arkansas, because this isn't a football state. Get the right coaches, get the right staff, do the right recruiting, do this thing right, and if Frank Broyles could do it, if I could paint a picture for everybody of what the facilities were like over there when I got here, and it was worse in the 60s. They had rinky-dink facilities here. I remember the first time I saw Razorback Stadium, I grew up in Lubbock going to Jones Stadium, and it's not huge, but it was a lot nicer than Razorback Stadium was in those days. And I thought, man, this is weird. Texas Tech got a better stadium than these guys. And then I looked at their practice field, and it was this little half practice field. It was like a grass field and a half, kind of over there in the corner. And I thought, the facilities stink around here. But Frank won a national championship here in spite of that, because he had good coaches, because they recruited well, and because the fans showed up and everybody liked it, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's a good place to go to school, and they won. If they can do it back then, they can still do it now.
Well, absolutely, because they have way better facilities
way
now.
Better.
Way better. So, I mean, you can't make any excuses, right?
There is no excuse, in my opinion. Not an excuse if you're saying you just can't do it here.
Yeah.
You just don't have the right people. I'm telling you, the right people can do it.
Absolutely. Alabama Hog says, I recently read an article about Jason Peters discussing his long career. About Jason Peters discussing his long career. Do you think he'll be selected to the NFL Hall of Fame on the first ballot?
You know, he's the oldest player in the NFL, 42 years of age, 7 Pro Bowls, All-Pro twice. You got current NFL players saying, the younger guys saying, he's the best overall athlete I've ever seen, I've ever played against. He was a tight end here a million years ago. I think it was the Houston Nutt era.
A million years
I mean, it's so far back, it's hard to even remember when he was here.
He's 42, so yeah.
So yeah, he's 42. That was over 20 years ago. And will he get in on the first ballot? I can't promise. I don't do the NFL. I don't know who these guys that vote, but if they don't, they're nuts. I mean, who's better? A guy that's 42 years old and he's still in the NFL. A guy that was a tight end in college but has done all this as an offensive lineman in the NFL. And again, you got guys saying, they play against him and go, man, that guy's 42. He's the best player I've ever played against.
Yeah.
He's a tremendous athlete. And he was a tremendous athlete. That's why he was a tight end, even though he had the size of an offensive lineman, because he's a pass catcher, in spite of how big he was.
I think you make a good case for him right there.
So,
I mean, they'd be kind of nuts.
I don't vote, but vote him in on the first ballot.
There you go. All right.
When he retires.
You've heard it right here on Ask Mike. If
I don't think they can make him in the Hall of Fame when he's still playing, can they?
No, I don't believe so. But but when he retires, they can. WV Hog fan, why can't they wait until after the bowl season before opening up the transfer portal? Why should a player be able to leave a team before a bowl game after helping a team to a bowl? It's like a player deserting a team to meet their selfish needs.
Well, you make your point first, because I don't think it's got anything to do with the portal. I think a lot of players just don't want to play in a bowl
I just
game.
don't think players want, they don't give them reasons.
It depends on the bowl game.
It depends, yes,
And
absolutely.
and in some cases, Georgia, thinking they still should be playing for the national championship, but because we only have 4 teams, next year they would have still been in. But you can't expect them, when they went into that Alabama game the whole season thinking they're going to play for a national championship. Now they got to go to a bowl game. What does that mean to them?
I think and that's why you're seeing players of that caliber opt out, because they're going, why am I going to put my health on the line? If you're maybe hoping to go to the NFL or things like that, you're going, why should I play? And if your mind is made up about that you want to transfer, why are you going to have them play in the bowl game where, hey, I'm already deciding that I want to leave after this year?
Let me just say, even if the portal didn't exist, that doesn't mean they would still play in the bowl game.
No.
They might decide not to anyway.
Yeah, they might just say, you know what, I actually just don't want to play in this. I don't want to put my health on the line. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. We've had, I can't remember this kid's name now, but I remember the first Razorback that did that. When the regular season ended, he opted out of the bowl game, and we interviewed him, and he gave his reason why he wouldn't want to do it. He wasn't apologetic. He just said, look, I'm already looking ahead to the NFL. I'm going to start getting ready for the NFL.
Exactly, and I don't think that's a selfish reason. I think that's not a bad reason to go and say, hey, I'm not going to play in a bowl game. But if it mattered for something, right, if there was something bigger that they're playing for,
then they would probably stay.
Then they would probably stay and play for it. It's just there's so many bowl games right now. And I think it will help with expanding the playoffs, right? Because then you have more to play for. You have a chance to get in and play for something at the end of the season rather than just 4 teams doing that. I just think there's so many bowl games. Why are you going to play in the XYZ Bowl, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever sponsor bowl it is.
So there's that part of the answer, but then there's the original question, more to that question. Why don't they do this? Why don't they move the portal until after the bowls? Because the coaches wouldn't do it. And here's why. The whole purpose of bringing a kid in the portal and why it's become more important than recruiting of high school athletes is because you're trying to get somebody that can play right away in your system. If you move this past the bowl season, school would have already started. They can't come in here and go through spring football, go through your off-season program. They would have to come in the summer after the semester's over, and then they've missed spring football. So your first introduction of them into your system is August camp.
Yeah.
Who's going to do that? If you're bringing in an offensive, Pittman's bringing in 3 or 4 offensive linemen to replace guys that he doesn't want because they either left or they were playing poorly. So you want to rebuild your offensive line. You're not going to say, okay, but we can take these guys and we can bring them in August and we'll get them ready for the first game. You want to have them here in the off-season program where your strength and conditioning people can supervise them. You want them around their teammates so they can adjust to that. You want them to be around the coaches some. I don't know how much limited contact they can have. Then they have some summer workouts.
Yeah.
So they could come in and do that,
and
but you're not going spring football. You're not playing in a scrimmage. The coaches have no tape on how you blocked in the spring game or any of that stuff, spring scrimmages. So the coaches would not be for this because they know what the portal is about, and it's about bringing in guys that can play right now. Arkansas went out and got a commitment from a quarterback. He may or may not win the job, but they certainly want him, if he wins the job, to come in here and compete for it in the spring rather than just having him show up in August and go, I think I can win this job.
Exactly. And you want more time with them. It's a no-brainer for the coaching staff to go, well, why would we want less time with them? We'd rather have them in our system, like you said, with plenty of time to have them develop.
So I talked to Otis about this. He knows a lot more about recruiting than I do, but he said, they're not going to change that.
No, they're absolutely not. But also, there's so many bowl games, so just all the bowls that they can play in. And
that might be the real solution, is to eliminate some of these bowls that people don't want to play in anyway.
Exactly. I agree with that.
The expanded playoff, which would eliminate what's happening with all these people leaving Georgia right now.
Yeah.
And because they don't want to play in the bowl game, so some of them are in the portal, some of them are just not playing in the bowl game because they're going to the NFL.
Exactly. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. As a reminder, we don't have Ask Mike next week, so Merry Christmas and then Happy New Year's as well. We'll see you in 2024.